Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and I'm on the tightrope.
I just love your fire. We love your fire, your vision, your courage. What is it that keeps you going? So many people who would have accomplished 1/10 of what you've accomplished would have retired and gone off and stayed on that mountaintop that you talked about. What is it about your calling that keeps you so focused on the suffering and willing to talk, to sacrifice, to march, to go to jail, to serve others?
That's what keeps me from being depressed. I mean, I come from a long line of really depressed people. And what keeps me depressed is activism and knowing that in some small way I can make a difference. I mean, because I lived a third of my life hedonistically, I know what that feels like. It ain't no fun. You feel empty. We're chalices, us Homo sapiens. We're chalices, and the chalice needs to be full. And if you don't fill it with the sense of interconnectedness and meaningfulness, right, you're going to fill it with booze or sex or work or shopping or whatever, busyness. And so, I benefit from the fact that I've lived the other way and I don't ever want to go back there. Number one. Number two, everybody thought, oh, I'm a very privileged white person who was the daughter of Henry Fonda. And those guys, because originally it was the Nixon administration, they thought, well, if we scare her enough, if we come after her viciously enough, she's got white whippersnapper, she'll just fall. I never wanted them to think that I was weak. I always wanted to, I can keep going. Plus I sleep 9 hours a night and I eat healthy. So I'm healthy. Health is the most important thing.
Yeah.
My dad died 6 years younger than I am right now. And he was so old. And I'm almost 84 and I'm so young for my age. And it's because I sleep and I eat and I'm healthy.
Yeah. You mentioned that filling ourselves with, refusing busyness and distraction and, drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever it might be. And, I think, I wonder if you could reflect on whether or not there were, for some people during the COVID crisis, not all, obviously people who were sick, this was not true for, obviously not for their families, and perhaps not for people who were, obviously plunged into economic crisis, but for people who were not in those dire straits. I wonder if having time to really confront what one's life was filled with might not have been helpful, right, in helping the movements that many more people got involved in, that they realized that what were their lives filled with. Did you talk with people and have that kind of conversation?
Yes, I talked with people. I also read a lot and followed the news very closely. And I think most of us were just kind of going along and getting by, not really realizing that the guy who's delivering our packages can just barely squeak by. That waitress in the restaurant has to work 3 jobs and has to allow the customer to put his finger up her ass in order to get tips because her salary is so low that she depends on tips to survive. Right. We don't pay attention to that. But when COVID hit and we started finding out that, oh my God, these people who work for Amazon, they're having to go to work even if they're sick. These guys on the meat plants are having to go to work even if they're sick. And they're all people of color. For the most part, they're people of color and immigrants. Oh my God, I didn't realize it was the margins were so narrow.
Right.
And especially for women. And I think that people were very affected by that. It opened, started with the banging of the pots, right? And the singing and the applauding, and then people realizing, well, I can't just do that. I got to start putting some flesh on those bones. You know, it
Yeah.
can't just be pots clanging and cheering. Got to do something a little bit more. So people were ready to step forward in a way that they hadn't before. They knew
Yeah.
more. Their hearts were opened, and they were called to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know,
No,
I think the
indeed.
space, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cornell.
No. You go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I was just very quickly going to say, I think the space that, you know, being working from home or having the world slow down so dramatically meant that the level of distraction was so substantially reduced that it allowed for space to ask those fundamental questions that you have been so committed to asking. You know, what am I doing? What role am I playing? What's going on in the world? How can I do more? What is the circumstance that we're in? How did we get here? Right? Those questions they're drowned out frequently by the mass distraction that we are constantly asked to engage in, and then just the way our lives are structured. So I think it's been interesting to think about the pandemic in that way.
But you know, let's be superficial. There's two things that I miss: no traffic and
Oh,
having to think what I'm going to wear from the waist down. That is
honey, you don't know. You don't. I still haven't given up number two. I'm still way to go, Uggs. Exactly. That I don't know if I'm ever going back to pants that don't have some elasticity in them. I'm pretty sure
right, right.
that's yeah, I'm never wearing proper pants again. So the woman who comes up with the design that makes yoga pants look exactly like proper pants, that will be the most important revolution in the feminist wardrobe.
Right.
Um,
That's
but
right.
anyway, Cornell, you were going to say something. I think I interrupted you.
No, what I was going to say, the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to say that indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. So we have to have some breakthroughs of care, concern, sensitivity, willingness to make the kind of connection that Sister Jane has been making all of her artistic and political life. And how do you create conditions for the possibility of that kind of awakening with solidarity across skin color, national identity, sexual orientation, and gender, but have a political content and a spiritual and moral substance to it? And that's the threat to the status quo. See, with what you're doing with the ecological crisis, what Brother Barber and Sister Thea Harris is doing with the poor poverty campaign, bringing people together. What Brother Bernie was trying to do within the emaciated zone of electoral politics. That's a threat. And they will attempt to crush you, lie on you, misconstrue what you're doing, misunderstand. And if they can, they kill you, So that I think it's the examples that you have been able to actually bring to life, especially as a celebrity. Because in a commodified culture, people do give an inordinate amount of attention to celebrities. And so many of them are just scared, intimidated, careerists, opportunists, and haven't had a chance to cultivate their own sense of what the world really is in terms of what they see. Mm-hmm. And to act courageous.
So many are very empathic and involved, more and more.
In terms of the increase of numbers, but celebrities across the board are not like you, though, Sister Jane. Let's just be honest about it.
More and more.
It's hard enough. It's hard enough to be able to reach that level. So when you do, the last thing so many of them want to do is take a risk. It's understandable, but in the end, it's not. It's not salutary.
I have the metaphor that I have for people like me is we're repeaters. You know those towers at the top of mountains that you see, all these high towers? Well, they're called repeaters because what they do is they pick up the signals in the valley that aren't quite strong enough to get up and over the mountain and reach a broader audience. That's what those repeater towers are. And that's what celebrities are. Our proper role, and this is why I loved Fire Drill Fridays so much when we were live in DC, the celebrities would come and they would introduce the frontline folks, the voices that were never heard.
Right. That's nice. That's nice.
God. And then they would
That's
hear
beautiful.
them and they would say, oh my God. I mean, we learned so much from people that we'd never heard of before because some
Right.
famous person was willing to stand there and introduce them. That's our role.
Hey there. Thank you for joining us on The Tightrope. For the full episode, please visit us at www.thetightrope.pod.com. We'll see you soon.